if you're not being bullied, you are definitely on the wrong track.
Yeah, there you go. Well, it's you know. Okay, so here we go.
We're searching for sunshine. We're looking for a friendly place. A silver lining, a happy face, a little grin in that open space, and a chance to say, have a happy day.
What is the diagnosis of life?
Well, the diagnosis of life is that you have to die in it.
And what do you mean by die in it? Because
Well, it's a deadly disease. Life is a deadly disease. You are being born, thrown into the world, confronted with a reality from which you expect a lot to happen to you, good things, happiness, well-being, etc., etc. And what is happening is that you grow older and you grow more pains and more accidents and more suffering, and in the end you die. That's what you have from life.
so you start to break. Tell me, I'm going to quickly find this. There's a Japanese art called, I think it's kinoshiri. And what it is, I'm going to read it out for you quickly.
I only know the Japanese art harikiri.
No, we're not going to be doing that.
No.
It's a kinoshita. Okay, I don't think I can find. Where is it? Okay, so what the art is that basically what the Japanese do, they have an aesthetic. If you break a bowl, if you drop a ceramic bowl, what
Yes, I know that.
I know it. Yeah, you know it.
And they repair it, and it's worth more repaired than it was in its original state.
Correct. So tell me about how that relates to living.
Oh, well, that is what meaning does. Meaning is the glue that glues together the shambles of failing, accidents, suffering.
And you get to do that.
If you put it back together as if you knew how it was meant to be, then your bowl is going to be called dignity.
Uh-huh. And also a bowl is something that you receive things from. It's a receptacle that into that goes nourishment. And from that can come into your body so that you can, and also you can share your bowl with someone else.
Not if you're Jewish. That would be offensive.
Probably, but for most people, I would.
You can share the food from the bowl, but not eating the bowl and then sharing it. That's offensive.
Okay. Well, I was thinking more along the lines of that. Where is it that I've seen this? That they pass around a bowl and you take a cake out or a cookie or something.
Yeah, you can take out a piece.
Yes,
but you can't just take a bite.
That's what I mean. Like you take a piece out of the bowl. Well, it's actually something I noticed when I was living in the Netherlands at birthday parties, where quite often, if there were cookies and they were on a plate, it wouldn't be like, I suppose, in terms of a custom, what I would be used to is that you'd have a host that walks around offering you cookies. I saw more often that each individual got past the plate and they took something and passed it on to the next person. Is this true or not? Or am I imagining this?
I don't have too much experience with Dutch parties.
A
Dutch party would do that, yes.
Okay. No, I think it's an interesting way of. I suppose other people do it too. Just
on a Dutch party, you bring your own food.
I heard a funny joke about the Scottish. That apparently, that if you go to a Scotsman's house, that they like put the food in the cupboards, they hide it away from you. Oh, fantastic!
That's like the English joke. Well, you know what a gentleman is?
No.
A gentleman is someone who stands up and leaves a woman with a child behind.
Oh, wow. Okay. I've never heard that joke before. Do you know where it comes from?
It comes from offering a seat in a bus.
Aha, you mean standing up for
if you
ladies.
If you sit on a seat in the bus and an older lady or a woman with a child comes in, you stand up and you give them your seat. So the Dutch joke is a gentleman is iemand die een vrouw met een kind laat zitten.
Ah, okay. So a gentleman is a man who lets a woman sit down with a child.
Yep.
But tell me, here's a quick question as well. It's something interesting that I noticed that actually you just said in house today as well. I used to, like when I was growing up, the custom was to call women ladies and men gentlemen. But as I've got older, I realized that sometimes giving them the title like that when they're not, well, when they don't deserve that sort of, lady is a sort of elevated status, it's a way of behaving and acting.
Yep.
But then again, I'm also reminded now of what Viktor Frankl said: treat people as they ought to be, rather than lower them than when you find them. So maybe it is actually. I just thought to myself, well, maybe I should actually call people. I would say that's not a lady, that's just a woman. I don't know.
No.
It's weird.
I always treat people like they are more than what they think of themselves. So I go to the supermarket. And I'm used to saying hello to the people who work there because I owe them a lot of respect. Without these people, there's no food in the store, and without them, I can't buy. And then I will get hungry and miserable. So I go and say good morning. And today I was with Claudia in the supermarket because we needed to buy some glasses with Thüringer sausages for my mother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
And she wondered how it came to be that all the people who work there say hello to me. They all seem to know me. So yes, I'm world famous in the supermarket in Worbis. But it's a very easy thing to do. I mean, pay respect. All people earn respect for what they do, for who they are, what they offer to you. Be grateful. That's the secret of a good life. Be grateful. There are so many reasons to be grateful for.
I think there are loads of things to be grateful for.
So if you want to know let's get back to the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Your question was, what do you expect from life? Life expects something from us. That is to be grateful, gentle, and attentive. We must pay attention.
It's funny. How is it that we've got to a point? Well, maybe it's always been this way. I'm not really sure. I was thinking about this yesterday, and that most people aren't really grateful. They just aren't. It's like demand, demand, demand.
Yes, because they were told and they were indoctrinated that life is like a bowl, like
Disney World,
fairyland, the Great Rice Mountain. There's this this story about Hansel and Gretchen.
Mm-hmm. Hansel and Gretel. Yep.
Yeah, people expect life to be like what Hansel and Gretchen found.
Well, what's really interesting, Dr. Maas, is that I found another great channel, or for someone we can look at and chat about. His name is Rich Roll. He is an ultra distance athlete. He must be 56 years old now. But anyway, he was an addict and various other things. But he was talking. I got his book actually, and his audiobook, and I was listening to him. And what's really interesting is that he comes to everything with such a sense of gratitude. And actually, I found from some of these really interesting athletes, these are like high performance people. They have such a sense of gratitude for being alive and for doing what they do. And you would think that they would have some of the biggest egos in the world, but it isn't. It's really
No.
counter.
Right.
It's counter.
That's right.
And they don't expect anything. It's like, what have I given? And also, he was describing. He said that he does long distance running, ultra running. He said it looks like you do it on your own. He said it's the total opposite. He said you don't actually realize. He said that you need to do the individual effort yourself, but you can't do it without a team. He said you can't do it without other people, because when things go wrong, that's when all the other people who are waiting to help come and help you to continue on your journey, on your race. And everyone's racing for themselves. Whilst it's competition, they compete with themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And what was really fascinating was he was talking to another lady, and she said she was talking about movement. Why don't people move enough? Why haven't we been moving enough? And of course, she touched on the subject. She said she didn't realize until she started looking at the sort of athletes like rich rollers, how much they actually really rely on other people, on the kindness also of other races. You would think they're all super competitive, but Rich fell down on his race, and everyone stopped to help him. They were like, oh, the other athletes, are you okay? Oh wow, you can't continue on your race. Can we help you? And it was just this like, they really are what they can give each other and how they can help themselves. And I thought this is such a great, and what a great sacrifice they put in to be able to do what they do.
Yeah, but that's great, of course. But think about human nature. My life is unthinkable without the life of my parents, who shared their lives and dedicated their time and effort to give me the possibility to live. No?
Mm-hmm.
And so each human life is preceded by two other humans, accompanied by two other humans who transcended themselves to enable you to be there. It's not about judging your parents, but it's like the very old. I think it's more than 3,000 years old. The commandment: honor your parents.
Mm-hmm.
I can honor my parents for having me. I can be grateful for being there and having the opportunity to make the best of my life, knowing that I am the last one in a long line, and I have the choice, and I can choose to be either their nightmare, the completion of their nightmare, because they were fallible people, or I can complete their best dream, and I owe them the last one.
It's interesting that you say that, because listening to Rich's story, and this is where I feel a bit bad about it. He was in one of the chapters. He was describing his childhood, and he wasn't he had a lazy eye, bad eye, and he was horrible at sports, so he got picked on all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So he had thick glasses, and kids used to mock him. And he ended up swimming. Like, swimming became the thing that he wanted to do. But he had very, very supportive parents. I must say, I don't know many parents that would get up and drive their children at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to swimming practice. His dad sat in his car, and his dad went through his work. And every morning, like 5 days a week, his dad would help him to get where he wanted to go to. And I thought to myself, there are not many parents that really do that. But
doesn't matter what your parents did for you. They did one thing very good. They enabled you to be alive.
And that's true, I guess.
And there is nothing more a parent can do than to enable two people can enable one life.
True.
And if I look at my life and I wonder what I have achieved with it, there are two ways to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
if I expect to be the completion of their nightmare, their worst nightmare, or my worst nightmare, what would it be? What kind of a life would it have been?
Yeah.
So I decided to not do that, to acknowledge that I'm gifted with a clear mind and stubborn character and difficult behavior. As a child, I was constantly in trouble. Never mind, I got through it. And I decided to live my life in this way and making the best of it. And you see, I'm now over 70. I'm still there. Many others are gone and have lost their opportunities to complete their lives in the way that they would like to. And I'm still there.
Do you think they gave up, or they just didn't know how to find the way?
Many people suffer from self-inflicted illnesses, and or they die in stupid accidents in which they, of course, are involved in some way, and others fall victim to a stupid accident or were drafted and sent into a bloody war. And that hasn't happened to me. So I'm quite happy, quite privileged. I know I'm very privileged. For 15 years, I've had to face the complete end of my possibilities. I could well have ended under a bridge, but I didn't.
Yeah.
Somehow we succeeded to rebuild, and okay, we are not rich, but that was never my goal, and there is no purpose for it.
I heard a really interesting.
When I get home and one of my cats comes I see my cat, I spot my cat. She's starting to run because she hears my car.
Yeah.
And says hello. That is some reward.
There's something interesting I heard about being rich, and it can be defined as you're rich if you're living the life that you want to live. With what you've got. So
yes, to be simply grateful.
Correct.
The other day I was in the pub with some friends, and we have a once in a month meeting. That's called Stammtisch auf Deutsch in Germany. So there's a group of people who have an appointment in a pub once in a month. They meet, and there was this girl serving us beers, and the girl writes the price of the beer, and she was 20 cents off. And my neighbor said, "Well, that's not right. This is too expensive. She is asking too much." And I said, "Too much is that what you can afford if you are rich."
True.
So if you want to get to this girl and struggle with her for 20 cents, you're a poor man.
Yeah.
A very poor man.
That's actually, it's say poverty of the soul, especially if you've got...
And poverty of the heart and poverty of the mind.
That's another...
I can only try to invite people to surpass themselves. That's why I'm a therapist.
That's interesting. Another quick thing. I know that you don't have a lot of time today, but I was going to ask you the role of community. That's something else I've seen, because a lot of people, and I must admit sometimes myself included, think I have to do this all on my own, but it's something else I see and start to really feel is that we have to do it with each other. Again, even if you're doing like the long distance runners, they have to run the race on their own, but there's always someone there, close by to help them if they get into trouble. And they were saying, without the community, they couldn't be the individual they are, which was interesting. Yeah.
That's true. To be able to become a runner, other people must make sacrifices. They must share their time. They must postpone their own interests to a date that you are not running, because they are not able to run after you or to run next to you. But to enable you to run, you need a community. Whatever you do as a human being, you are being born into a community. So that's the point of life. What I said, two people enable one child to become alive. Who this child is not in the hand of the two people, of the father and mother. Although many people nowadays try to design a baby, which is complete Nazism. I can't mention that in another way. It's the Nazis wanted to design the Superman. Many modern parents wanted to design a super child because they don't like themselves. They don't believe that life itself is nothing but a person happens to it. So they don't even allow this child to happen.
So it's like they believe in it's sort of like the sort of dumb universe hypothesis.
Yeah. It's a consumerism. It's the stupidity of all reductionist thinking and consumerism, that life is worth nothing unless I control it. It's called a compulsive neurotic disorder. But you are being born into a community. Wherever you are being born, there is a community. And we learn as small children that the best way to live is to share. So why do we leave that behind? Why do we stop believing that sharing is the best possible way to live our lives? Why do we need to be on top like a famous American president and his minister said in Munich today? Do you know about anyone who is not strong and has survived history? Yes, I know a lot of them. The good people, the people that we remember, like Martin Luther King or someone like Jimmy Carter or the Florence Nightingale or so many others who we remember as being gentle, humble, modest, and truly humane. Do you really think that in 20, 30 years, if nothing happened, God forbid that something bad happens, but in 20, 30 years, no one will remember these loudmouth people who want to be the strongest? They have a personality problem.
Yeah. I was going to say... Sorry.
Yeah?
Pardon me. No, excuse me. Please just continue.
Also, even if it is true that history is about the victors, what we learn in history books is not about the ones who lost. In church history, we know nothing about heretics, but we know a lot about systems that survived. Sure. But beneath that, apart from that, one must say that the good and gentle and humble and modest people have not been eradicated. How strong these guys think they are. They have not eradicated us.
True.
And the future of human being is not death. The future of human being is the spirit.
I think it's interesting you say that because, you hear what's been in the news recently and has been talked about, that we also live right in an age right now, 2020 being the year we're in, that apparently a lot of people feel isolation and loneliness, and how this relates to this sort of mentality or this mindset they have, that they need to be greedy and not... What is the opposite of generous? I suppose greedy, in a way, might be the opposite.
Yeah, self-centered.
Excuse me. Self-sacrificing or sharing, rather. So, I wonder what the relationship between sharing and loneliness is, because the more we don't share ourselves with each other, perhaps the more we crawl back into these shells and live these, as they say, quiet lives of desperation, because we're not willing to...
You can live in hell if you want to, but you can also decide to ennoble your life, to make the best of it, no matter where you are, no matter who you were born, how you were born, no matter about your education. You can always start to improve your life.
Sure.
And to make it to make your environment a better place. You can always start to be a good friend to someone else. And you must remember that there is this old story. The question is Hitler in hell or in heaven? Where is Adolf Hitler? Mm-hmm. And there's this rabbi who says his spirit is simply lost. He is neither there nor here.
Yeah.
And that is, the rabbi said, there is no future for humankind with him. So remember that. If we want a human future, we all yearn for a life without pain, without suffering, without loss, without guilt, without death. No, we would like to live without dying, because we remember very vaguely how it was to be born, and that wasn't fun. Mm. So we want to live in a world without these problems. But for this future, we have to invest ourselves. And if you don't contribute to others, like I think I'm grateful to the people who work in the grocery store. If I'm not grateful to them, there is no food for me.
Yeah, Willem, do you think that if people, I think sometimes that because they refuse to take responsibility for themselves and they crawl into themselves in these holes, and they're looking for these external labels for them to be diagnosed. You know, you're sick, so now we have a way to treat you, but it's again, it's like you need to put oil in the engine, but you buy a can of oil and you just cover the external of the car. There we are. I put oil on the car, in the car, but nothing happens. Nothing changes. Things get worse. And what I can reference to you about that is that I was listening to a lady called Mrs. Kaplan. She is a scientist and one of the few people who sat on the board who was reviewing the DSMV Diagnostic Statistical Manual for the American Psychiatric Association, and she asked questions along the lines of, so we have all these diagnoses, these rules, and she was giving an example of how PMS is considered to be a psychological disorder, not a natural occurring phenomenon. And she asked one of the authors, it was a footnote in the DSM-4, and now it became an actual diagnosis in DSM-5, and it was like, what? Anyway, so she made that comment, but more than that, she said that with all the science being used, and I use inverted commas around that the funny thing about all these diagnostical tools they have is that they are not scientifically derived. No one can show you the science behind the diagnostic tool.
Tools are agreements between psychotherapists depending on insurance reimbursement.
This is exactly what she's saying. It's all about the money, and the pharmaceutical industry is driving this. So
people refuse to pay us for our work. So what we do, we make a political group and try to convince the insurance companies, the health insurance companies, or the state insurance services to reimburse the money that people are using by using our time. They want to be helped out of their problems, but they don't want to pay for it because they have no product. They have nothing in return.
It's true.
So for the nothing that we give in return, we would like to be paid. And that's why the statistical manuals grow and grow and grow. And on the other hand, the insurance companies want to make sure that if I cannot give a diagnosis 98.4 and I do that on 3 axes, then I have no problem. So I'm not entitled to money.
Yeah. Well,
That's the problem. Just an hour ago, a patient came into our practice. It's this Saturday. It's weekend. And he wanted to know he needs dental work, but he is not rich enough. So he came in and asked, can you explain that? He has built himself a house and he has 2 children. So he has a lot of money that he is losing on that. And he can't afford expensive dental work. But he needs, because he can't eat any longer. It's impossible. And he has intestinal problems because he can't eat properly. So he came to Claudia. And she sat down and explained to him and for more than an hour what the alternatives would be, how we could start and how we must expand that and by which manner we can make sure that the health insurance is going to allow us to do the work, and what is then left for this patient to self-pay. I mean, the health insurance doesn't pay implants, so the patient himself must pay the implants, and they're not for nothing. That is an art to be able to really good implantation.
Sure.
What do you know? What do you think that this hour of our weekend time, she was back in the practice because she had to do her writing, her administrative work. Mm-hmm. So this man took an hour. How much do you think we get for that hour?
Nothing.
Really, true, nothing. But if we don't spend the hour, this man is going to be bad, in bad health. So we don't want that, and thus we spend the hour. Maybe the plan works. Maybe he gets an insurance on top. Maybe it's all maybes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's very much simpler to say, I'm sorry, you have to pay 8,000 euros or 16,000 euros or whatever. See to it that you get the money, then I'll work.
Yeah.
But we give ourselves trouble to go to the details. Say, well, here it's possible to cut a corner, and there it is possible to make a different move and still be in the plan, because the plan is being delivered to the health insurance, and they must allow it. Mm. But we need to make the best for our patients, so that's why we spend time.
It's interesting. Just I quickly found how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the 8. Shall we say? And I'm going to say mental illnesses. I have to refer back to Thomas Zaz, who really questioned what is a mental illness.
Yeah.
But has been called that this lady talks about a pandemic. And she said it looks like a pandemic if you start to look at the last 20 years of diagnoses, because you have this massive rise in people who are diagnosed with things like general anxiety disorder or anxiety, that substance abuse, as we can see with opioids, has skyrocketed. Major depressive disorders, dysthymia, bipolar disorder has also been skyrocketing in terms of people being diagnosed with this. Dementia, schizophrenia, and also eating disorders. Those eight mental health evaluation metrics are just, those are the core 8 areas, and these are the ones actually that got integrated into the diagnostic model, and now we have this amazing amount of people that suddenly, it was like saying, well, there's an argument that comes up, well, we couldn't diagnose it before, and now we can diagnose it now, but also beforehand, sort of in step with the development of a lot of psychiatric medication, we suddenly have all these new people. And one of the doctors, and also a science writer called Robert Whittaker, he said, well, you would think that once we've diagnosed these problems and can treat them, that we would see a decrease in the, like if you look at the development, he gave an example of the polio vaccination. Once we could vaccinate people, polio went down, it became eventually eradicated. And he's like, we're not eradicating any problems here.
We did not eradicate that. Polio is partly by a somatic illness and a very laming type of illness. But polio was at its high during the deepest crisis of our modern history, and then it decreased. Today,
do you mean World War II?
Yeah.
Okay.
We live in a time where it is where life seems to be meaningless, empty. So a lot of psychological problems do arise, and even if we find cures for that, the political and economical circumstances in which we live cannot be stable. And as long as these are not stable, new diagnoses will come up, new names will come up, new masks for common problems. And the more we tell people that they are suffering from a diagnosis, the more people will want to be
should we say treated for their problems.
They want to be excused for work.
Aha.
It's called the gain of illness.
The gain of illness, because
they gain by their illnesses. That's the one. That's the one side. The other side is that our food industry puts so many chemicals into the food processes that we are being poisoned all the time, or we are being exposed to 5G radiation, which is tremendously dangerous, according to many scientists. But the interests of economy ignore that, and they lead people by the nose around their own garden and say that's harmless, but it is not. And so our health is being decreased. And if you feel bad because your body doesn't function and your mind is blurred, no wonder that you develop psychological problems.
Because, it's interesting. A lot of people talk about something called like a mind fog, that their brains feel foggy. Yeah. And I learned something else which was really interesting from, what's her name? Kerry McGonigal. She's a scientist an educator from Stanford. She did some research into something called, it's a protein which is released it's actually secreted from the muscles. Mm-hmm. And she was saying that the scientists noticed that when people start to move, even just walking or taking a brisk walk, a little bit of exercise, that these proteins are released and hormones into the body, which actually go about working their way into the brain and helping to alleviate like stress. Like once you start to move, your body goes, aha, okay, your muscles release this substance into these hormones and proteins into your body, and you feel better. It's like there's a built-in mechanism to actually help people to feel better and deal with the stresses of life. It's as if nature thought, okay, well, it's good. You're going to need to survive and go and hunt and do things like this under difficult conditions. Yeah. So I tell you what we'll do. as you evolve, if you move, there'll be a reward. Not necessarily a reward in terms of. I sort of think about addiction, like there are sort of rewards in it, but it's like the body heals itself, and that's a natural process.
Yeah.
And apparently, it's in all animals. I think they call it the hope molecule.
So living beings have a self-healing capacity, and if you are patient, which means it takes time, you know that a cold takes a week to come, stays a week to make you stay at home. And then you need a week of recovery. So in 3 week times, the building site in your body is over. No? So we know, for instance, the new coronavirus survives 9 days.
Okay.
So in order to survive that, you need time. Self-healing capacity is there. But if there is no meaning, why do you think self-healing doesn't work?
True.
If you live an empty life, if you live a life without meaning, without a sense of purpose, without someone to live for, something to act upon, instead of just reacting, if you don't have that, there's no way to heal. Your doctor is not going to heal you. He can't do it. He can give you a prescription, and that's a kind of hypnosis next to physical poisoning. So you feel different, and but he doesn't heal your problem.
But Dr. Maas, what do people do if they're isolated and they don't have these support networks? They can't, it's very difficult for them to find someone to I wouldn't say live for, but to basically do what you're expressing, particularly now, if you look at how a lot of human relations are going, particularly between, and I'm not saying this to exclude anyone else that are not male or female or straight or whatever other definition they are of their, should we say, I'm not even talking about sex here, but generally, if a man and a woman form a couple, in general, that it seems that because of almost consumerism, productification, that no one's willing to invest in each other, or else they have these long checklists, and if for some reason you don't fulfill the requirements of that, they just ditch you, or particularly I think amongst younger people in their 20s and 30s, they are really struggling to find, it would appear, relationships that actually are meaningful to each other, because there's this drive between live your explore your sexual liberation and be free, and that next thing, that's like, okay, basically it says be a whore, be a slut, have sex with everything you can, but it's working against everyone because they can't form bonds with each other. There's always someone else, or they need to explore themselves and find out, the inner depths of their, should we say, fetishes and things like that. So else they're not, in their idea, living a full life. In fact, it's become all about pleasure.
Yes, the pleasure principle is, of course, very much in our society tells you that you need to experience pleasure until you can't experience any more. At the same time, our society promotes a struggle to be on top. You are in a hierarchy instead of in a community. So you need to get it on top. And these two are like a pair of scales. No? The more you go for pleasure, the less you get on top. The more you want to be on top, the less pleasure you get, because it's a struggle. And there is a third way, and the third way, and that's what I need to say to conclude this talk, because I have to go.
That's a great way to end.
If you look for a third way, look for meaning and dignity. If it's your dignity that you stick your penis into anybody, then it's your responsibility. What happens to you is then in self-inflicted suffering. And if you struggle for being on top, and you know that only one can get to the top, if you are the one that gets on top, okay. But if you're not the one that gets on top and you are frustrated and live your frustration in anger and violence, then forget about it. Look for a different way, for a third way. And that's the way for a good life is to find meaning and to act in dignity.
Fantastic.
I'm humble and grateful.
Fantastic. Dr. Maas, thank you so much for your time today. I hope that you have a lovely evening. All the best regards to your lovely wife and your cats. And no doubt we'll be back soon with another topic. So thank you very much.
Happy to do. Yeah. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
We're searching for sunshine. We're looking for a friendly place. A silver lining, a happy face, a little grin in that open space, and a chance to say, have a happy day.